think about a whole house budget, right? A whole household budget. So oftentimes we think of our food budget as separate, our housing, how much we spend for gas. Think about all of it. And then really, this is a great opportunity to get back to basics and really identify what is the base, like what's our foundation? What is it that we absolutely have to spend? Like what are our fixed costs? Usually our housing is a fixed cost. Sometimes insurance is a fixed cost. And then what are our variable costs, which tend to be food and fuel. And so those are the ones in the short run that we can change, that we can modify.
The cost of everything seems to be going up. So how do you deal with increased prices? A K-State Research and Extension Family Resource Management Specialist says that some strategic budgeting, planning, and cost-cutting can help reduce the impact that higher prices are having. On today's Sound Living, offsetting higher prices. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. Extension Family Resource Management Specialist Elizabeth Kish also says to make sure that you're buying only the things that you actually need, cutting costs at the grocery store by meal planning, shopping with a list, and cooking at home, and looking for ways to save on regular purchases, both big and small. Elizabeth, one of the things we're seeing a lot of in the news is the fact that prices continue to increase, and while we can't influence what the prices are, we can kind of influence maybe how we react to those price increases.
That's right. I think it seems like price increases are with us for at least a little while longer, and it can be a really good opportunity to take a considered look at how we're spending our money. For example, think about your groceries, things that you buy all the time. Maybe you don't even think about it, but you're noticing the prices are going up. Well, is this a time to think about what are some substitutes for those items that would still meet your family's needs and preferences, but maybe cost a little bit less? For example, there's a range of prices for milk often, and so maybe start thinking about that. We're going into spring and summer, and this is a time when you can shop at local farmers markets and you can get what you want and the quantity that you want. So then you may have less waste. In addition to food, there's other household products that we buy on a regular basis. Think about laundry detergent. I had to buy laundry detergent this weekend, and I was like, oh, my goodness, I haven't bought it for a while. So, in that area, full loads of laundry, only use as much as is recommended for your type of washing machine and the load that you're doing. And, again, look for perhaps lower-cost substitutes that still meet the criteria that you are looking for in a laundry detergent. And we all have different preferences. One of mine is scent or lack of. And so if I don't like the way it smells or the way it makes my clothes smell, I'm not going to use it. I don't care how inexpensive it is.
That's a good point, though, because sometimes you want to get the least expensive, but sometimes you're maybe better off getting something that you know you're going to use and something that meets your needs.
That's right. We have so much choice, and that is actually perhaps part of the problem. It's very hard to distinguish between one product and another, even within the same brand. Think about toothpaste. And different stores actually might carry the same brand and you think it's the same thing, but the description is slightly different. And so how do you know really what's better than others? And of course, you can go online and you can look for ratings and things like that. I'm a little bit sometimes skeptical about how much of those are spontaneous ratings versus, people who are trying to influence for whatever reason. So I think your own experience or that of people you trust in some of these purchasing decisions can be most helpful. Another response to increased prices, especially maybe for services, is to do some things yourself as appropriate and as you can really do them. I've seen some ads recently about a spouse who's going to handle a plumbing problem, and it just makes it worse, right? So there can be a time when you have to know when you have to call the professionals. I totally agree with that. But there may be some things that you could do, or cook more from scratch, or, this time of year, a lot of people's minds turn to gardening, and gardening can be a way to increase your access to vegetables, herbs, possibly fruits. But you do have to understand that unless you are willing to dedicate the time to it and you have a little bit of skill or know who to contact, which could be your extension office, it might not really replace the things that you have to buy from the grocery store. It's more like a supplement. So you have to be aware of that too.
In the past, we've talked a lot about impulse buying and trying to avoid that impulse buying, and having a list is one good way to do that.
Yeah, having a list is a very good way to avoid impulse buying. I think also now with prices being what they are, many of us, myself included, may not have that much flexibility for impulse. So you really do have to focus on what are our needs, not to say that we can't have some things that we want, but planned. So it's more like meeting our needs and our wants without being impulsive about it.
I think one of the things we're saying is watch those smaller purchases, because that money does add up as you go through the grocery store or a retail store. Some of those little purchases can really add up.
Yeah, they really do add up. And so, we've been talking about grocery. We've been talking about household purchases. Also, if we think about clothing purchases, I realized I probably don't need to buy another pair of white socks for 10 years, as long as I take care of the ones I have. Or things like that, just like figure out, what do you have? And, a lot of people did the whole Marie Kondo thing during COVID. Some people haven't. But it's spring, right? It's kind of a nice time to take stock of what we have and think about what is it that we really need, and can we get more wear out of things that we have?
What about in terms of maybe some of the larger purchases that we might be considering? Would this maybe be a time, if we don't have to replace the refrigerator, we put it off as long as we can in hopes that the prices will come down eventually?
I would say if you're anticipating that you're going to need to replace an appliance within the next 3 to 6 months, now is a good time to start doing the shopping part of it, getting the information about brands and models and prices as they are today. So you can start thinking about, okay, if I have to do this in a hurry, this is how much I'm likely to have to spend. I mean, the prices may go down, they may not go down. So the longer you have to plan for that expense, the better off you might be. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll have cash in hand for all of it. You still may have to put it on a credit card or take money out of savings. But that's why we have emergency funds too, is for when we have to make some of these purchases. Some of them are planned and some of them are truly emergency purchases.
When we see the prices starting to increase, I guess the tendency might be to, I'm not going to save as much this month. I'm going to have to try to move this money around a little bit. But I think we would still maybe try and encourage people to cut back where they can and still maintain to at least save something.
It's always good to save something, and something is better than nothing, right? So we all waste a lot of food. So really try not to waste food. Substitute lower costs, less expensive, but still maintain the quality that you want, and then still try to save. We haven't talked about utilities, and that's an area now. I'm so excited. The other day, I know I talk about this with you a lot, I got 3 degrees of gain in heat during the day. So that means my furnace didn't go on, and I was so excited. And like the last 2 days, my furnace hasn't gone on at all. It's been warm enough. So, things like that, and we talk about this a lot in the summer, but at this time of year where we maybe need to take a little bit of the chill off, open your curtains during the day, get the warmth, and then close them at night to keep the warmth in. Later, when it gets warmer and you maybe are starting to use your air conditioner, close the curtains during the day to keep the heat out, and then open them to get some sunlight at the end of the day.
I know with gas prices being what they have been, my son was talking the other day about how he's finally learning to make all of his errands at once instead of getting in and out of the car, in and out, and driving all over town. He's being a little bit more strategic about where he goes and how he goes.
That's right. I think gasoline for our vehicles is another place where probably people are feeling these price increases. And if you can be strategic about your use of your vehicle, again, keep it well maintained, keep the tires inflated appropriately, drive the speed limit, use your cruise control, think about when it's appropriate to have the windows down and when actually that is a drag on gas mileage, oil changes. All of those things can really impact, maybe not in a week, but month to month, they can impact how much fuel you end up having to buy for your vehicle.
We often talk about reviewing your insurance coverages, and this might be a good time to do this. You may not save a lot, but if you can save some or make some modifications in your coverage, it might make a difference.
It might make a difference. I think one thing, and I'm wondering about this in my own insurance coverage, is because the cost of building materials has gone up, does that mean the cost of my homeowner's insurance has gone up or will go up next time it renews, right? And the same with vehicles. I mean, if a new vehicle is that much more expensive, does that mean my paid-off vehicle that's, low mileage or low-ish mileage actually is, going to be harder to replace as well?
One of the things I've noticed is people are buying houses, right and left, but what they're realizing is they're getting a great price for their house, but they're also having to pay more for another house. So sometimes you wonder, it's like, maybe I should just stay where I am because I'm going to have to pay out more to move somewhere else.
Well, and there's always that cost of moving too, the transaction cost. What I've observed is that people are buying more house or they're changing neighborhoods, so they're taking advantage of that opportunity. And maybe it was in their longer range plan anyway to stay in the house that they just sold and move somewhere else. So I think we don't know. I haven't heard a lot about people downsizing. But, this can be an opportunity for younger families to move out of sort of their starter home to something else. And so maybe that something else is an older family who is downsizing.
I think sometimes we look at this from the standpoint of everyone is affected the same, but some things hit people harder than other things, and price increases will hit a certain demographic a lot harder than others.
Well, that's true, and it really depends on what we're buying. So I'm not in the market for a house, right? But I am eventually going to be in the market for a car, so I'm kind of keeping my eye on that situation. I do buy groceries. I do buy household items, and so, yeah, very true. All of us are in a different situation, and what our priorities are and what our goals are is different from family to family and household to household.
I'm thinking the bottom line here is maybe think along the lines of making the modifications that you can so that you can stretch those dollars in other areas.
Yes. Think about a whole house budget, right? A whole household budget. So oftentimes we think of our food budget as separate, our housing, how much we spend for gas. Think about all of it. And then really this is a great opportunity to get back to basics and really identify what is the base? Like, what's our foundation? What is it that we absolutely have to spend? Like, what are our fixed costs? Usually our housing is a fixed cost. Sometimes insurance is a fixed cost. And then what are our variable costs, which tend to be food and fuel? And so those are the ones in the short run that we can change, that we can modify. And then the other, I suppose, good thing, one thing that we talk about is you can decrease expenses, increase your income, or a combination of both. And with the labor market the way it is, there are jobs potentially. And so if it's to the point where, you might think about taking on a part-time job or something like that, just even if it's for a short time, to sort of respond to the current situation, but also maybe to work towards some longer-term goals.
Somebody was kind of joking the other day about having to go back and live like a college student. They were eating a lot of spaghetti. They were eating a lot of macaroni and cheese and things like that. And I thought, maybe that's not such a bad thing because we got by when we were in college, but we weren't buying everything we wanted. We knew what we had, and we cut back where we needed to so that we could do the fun things.
Right. And I think that's the thing is like, and we've probably all had a lot of creep. For 2 years, we didn't travel a lot. So we had that money in our budget and we spent a lot more time at home. So we wanted it to be nurturing, and it still can be nurturing. But I think we just need to maybe not live like students or how we did when we were starting out. But, we have so much abundance in general in our country, and really just think about what abundance means to you, what satisfies you versus like going over the top.
That's K-State Research and Extension Family Resource Management Specialist Elizabeth Kish. To learn more about family finances, contact your local county or district extension office. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.